Hi, this is Dr. Perry Carpenter. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to join me on this week's video. In this week's video, we're in session number 8 of our ongoing series regarding the new medical legal fee schedule. And you might be wondering to yourself, well, why do we need 8 sessions on such a discussion? And I'm here to tell you that the reason that we have 8 sessions, and there will probably be 18 sessions by the time we're done with this ongoing series, the reason we have 8 sessions is because the new medical legal fee schedule is rapidly unfolding right in front of our very eyes, and we're starting to see how the parties on both sides, both the QMEs and the claims payers, and other parties as well, including the applicant attorneys and the defense attorneys, are attempting to utilize and or you might say manipulate the new medical legal fee schedule to their own advantage. And before we get into the topics of today's discussion, I want to set the stage and set the tone for you to be able to understand what is actually going on with the new medical legal fee schedule. The new medical legal fee schedule is a brand new game. It's a brand new game. Now, in your life, have you ever experienced a brand new game? Imagine you are inventing a brand new game. Let's say, for example, you were inventing a game, and that game was going to be called basketball. And you got together with some people and you were explaining the rules of the new game. And you said to one group, you said, the purpose of this game is for you to take this ball, take it down to that hoop and net, and put this ball in the hoop and net. And if you can score from this line, you'll get 1 point. If you can score from anywhere else, you get 2 points. And if you can put the ball in the net from outside this arc here, which is a long way from the basket and the hoop, you can get 3 points. And you explain the rules of the game to these 2 groups of people who are opposing each other. And to the one group you say, your job is to put this ball in the hoop. And the people from the other group look at you and they say, well, what should we do? And your response to them is, well, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to block them from putting the ball in the hoop. Okay? And so both sides begin to understand their roles in this new game. Well, would it be a surprise to you then if each of the sides start to develop a strategy for how best to utilize the rules in their own favor? Would you be surprised if this group over here, the group whose job it is to put the ball in the net, would it be a surprise to you if that group decided, hey, everybody listen, if we can put the ball in the hoop from outside this line, we can get 3 points. That's 3 times as much as if we put the ball in the net from this free throw line where we only get 1 point. Would you be surprised if that strategy developed on this side? And then what about on the other side? Would you be surprised if the strategy over there developed that, hey, under all costs, no matter what, never let the guy take a shot from beyond this arc because they could score 3 points. Better to foul him and slap his hand and make him go to the free throw line where he can only get a maximum of 1 point. And he still has to make the shot. Let's take the risk of making him take a free throw for only 1 point than letting him have a free shot at a potential 3-pointer. And I think you're getting the analogy. And that's what's operative with the new medical legal fee schedule. We have a new set of rules, and each party is using those rules, and rightfully they should. They rightfully should. We should not be surprised. We should not be upset that each side is rightfully using the rules along the lines of their incentive to maximize their benefit under the new medical legal fee schedule. And the reason we're here in session number 8 is because strategies are maturing. In the beginning, strategies were developing, strategies were being considered. Now, as we're into the throes of the new medical legal fee schedule, strategies are maturing, and I want to share with you some actual case examples of what's happened in just the last couple of weeks as we continue to evolve and develop through the new medical legal fee schedule. So I have a fascinating discussion for you. And the purpose of today's discussion is for me to be your coach. I'm going to be your coach, just as each of the sides of this new game called basketball have coaches to help them develop their strategy. Well, I'm going to help you develop your strategy so that you can maximize your benefit under the new medical legal fee schedule. I'm going to share with you some material that you cannot find anywhere else. So with that stated, and just a word from our sponsor, please support the continuing education programs from Easy Continuing Education, because we bring you concepts, ideas, and materials and methods that you can use in your day-to-day QME practice that you can find nowhere else. Nowhere else. No one is bringing you session 8 on the new medical legal fee schedule. So please provide your support to our sponsor of this program, which is Easy Continuing Education. Okay? So before we get into the discussions of today's topic, let's just briefly review where we've come from so far. In session 1, we talked about the history and philosophy of the new medical legal fee schedule. And in short, the history of the development of the new medical legal fee schedule had to do with the fact that the old medical legal fee schedule was in shambles. We had a bunch of crazy doctors overbilling and getting disciplined for their misuse of the complexity factors. We had insurance companies not paying doctors and disputing doctors' charges for their evaluations. And the old medical legal fee schedule had run its course and had run into what you may have heard of in the past known as the Peter Principle. The Peter Principle. The old medical legal fee schedule went as far as it could for the way it was written, and that created the need for a new medical legal fee schedule. We talked about that in part number 1. In parts number 2 through 4, we compared and contrasted the old billing codes under the old medical legal fee schedule with the new codes under the new medical legal fee schedule, and I shared with you how the old codes had built-in incentives for both the QMEs and the claims payers. And then we took a look at the new incentives for both the QMEs and the claims payers in the new medical legal fee schedule. And we're going to talk much more in today's discussion about those incentives as those incentives begin to become much more known and much more overtly pursued by each of the parties. And I gave you several case examples of actual cases and how those cases would be billed under the old medical legal fee schedule, and then we compared to how those cases would be billed under the new medical legal fee schedule using the new codes, the new ML 201, 202, and the reevaluation code, which is ML 203. In part 5, we started to come upon the adoption date of the new medical legal fee schedule, and as we got closer to the implementation of the new medical legal, as we came upon the new implementation date of the new medical legal fee schedule on April 1st, 2021, we started to see with new eyes actually how the new medical legal fee schedule was going to impact everything about the business of being a qualified medical evaluator, how the new medical legal fee schedule was going to impact the administrative side of the scheduling of qualified medical evaluation appointments, of producing the report, of mailing the reports, of even pursuing collection for the reports, and then also how it was going to impact the face-to-face evaluation and the report writing process employed by the qualified medical evaluators. And I shared some of those insights with you at the time to the extent that they could be known at the time. And we could not have any in-depth insight at the time because we had not yet lived through any actual reports under the new medical legal fee schedule, but we were projecting at the time how that was going to impact our evaluation process. Then in part 6, now we started to get down into the nuts and bolts of how these communications between the parties had been affected by the adoption of the new medical legal fee schedule. And it was starting to become clearer and clearer that we as qualified medical evaluators had to change everything about our evaluations. Because while the old medical legal fee schedule involved time-based billing codes, those time-based billing codes were gone under the new medical legal fee schedule. And therefore, the qualified medical evaluator's incentive to expand time was gone. In fact, the opposite incentive, wherein the qualified medical evaluator was incentivized to condense and to compress and to reduce time, began to be known as the new incentive under the new medical legal fee schedule. And I gave you several practical applications as to how you could do just that, how you could compress time with each and every evaluation so as to maximize your hourly rate under the new flat rate and fixed fees provided for under the new schedule. Then that brought us up to our last session, wherein I shared with you some secrets of success for you as the qualified medical evaluator, all of which had to do with shaving time from your evaluation in every single aspect of your evaluation. And I'm going to share a few more ideas with you to expand on some of the topics that we discussed in this session. So that brings us to today. Today in session 8, I'm going to expand on what we discussed in our last session by sharing with you how the incentives of the party are now beginning to become overtly known. And this should come to us as no surprise. You know, I remember talking to some qualified medical evaluators back in April of 2021 when the new medical legal fee schedule was just being implemented. And there was some qualified medical evaluators who could see the writing on the wall, and some told me that they suspected that the claims payers and the parties were going to attempt to minimize the number of pages of medical records being sent to the qualified medical evaluator, because pages of medical records is the main driver of the costs of the evaluations under the new medical legal fee schedule. Page count of medical records is a critical determinant as to the cost of the overall evaluation. And of course, we could see that, and we could perhaps anticipate that perhaps it would seem likely that maybe the parties, in an effort to reduce their costs, may attempt to diminish the number of pages of medical records sent to qualified medical evaluators. Well, not only is that now true, and I will share with you some examples about that, not only is that now true, but other incentives are in place to help the parties win at the new game. Okay, and this should come as no surprise, but what I want to share with you in today's session, in a very frank discussion that you can find nowhere else, are ways that you as the qualified medical evaluator can maximize the benefit under your own incentive under the new fee schedule. So with that as our introduction, let's begin today's discussion, session number 8, regarding your secrets of success under the new medical legal fee schedule. Okay, so let's begin. This is your QME secrets of success under the new medical legal fee schedule, and this is session number 8. Now, an overriding theme that we've talked about in our earlier discussions is that in order for you to maximize your profitability under the new medical legal fee schedule, time is of the essence. Key principle: in all cycles of action, time shall be of the essence. Now, this is a different game for us under the new fee schedule, because under the old medical legal fee schedule, we had time-based billing codes, and therefore The incentive, the built-in incentive for us as qualified medical evaluators was to maximize time. Okay? I had one qualified medical evaluator tell me that during his face-to-face evaluation with an injured worker, he drank a lot of water, and he said it just like that. He said, "Perry, I drink a lot of water." Because drinking a lot of water would require frequent trips to the men's room, which would consume time, thereby allowing him to maximize the time of the face-to-face evaluation, and those days are gone. Now, we have fixed flat rate fee reimbursements, so therefore time is of the essence. For you to maximize your profitability, for you to maximize your hourly rate, for you to even meet the hourly rate prescribed for you by the Division of Workers' Compensation, which is roughly about $325 per hour, for you to even meet that hourly rate, time shall be of the essence for all cycles of action. And in our last session, I shared with you 3 areas of each evaluation wherein you could shave and save time in order to maximize your profitability. So we talked about how to change some of your intake procedures in order to minimize the time, not only minimize the time, but also maximize the chances that you would have no wasted time. That's another key principle, is that we cannot waste time. And I'll show you some examples as to where copious amounts of time can be wasted. And guess who pays the bill for wasted, lost time and lost opportunity? It's you as the qualified medical evaluator, you as the business owner. And I want to help you avoid those landmines and pitfalls, okay? So we'll expand on that today. We talked about medical records in our last session, and today I'm going to develop the topic of the importance of the medical records. The medical records are taking on new importance that we could never have anticipated before April 1st, and even in the early days after the April 1st implementation of the new medical legal fee schedule. But now, as time is passing, we're seeing with clearer and clearer vision just how the page count of the medical records is being leveraged by the parties. And guess who is the lever? The lever is you as the qualified medical evaluator. And I want to share with you some ideas as to how to comport your evaluation based upon the medical records that you do receive, and if it's true that the parties are attempting to minimize the number of medical records sent to you as a qualified medical evaluator, how to comport your evaluation based upon the medical records that you do not receive. And this is going to be some curious insight for you. Finally, in our last session, we talked about the new necessity of focusing and devoting time to answering the questions in the cover letters that the parties send to you. This is going to be more critical now than it ever was under the old medical legal fee schedule. And today, I have some actual real-life case examples as to how the questions that are posed to you by the parties can both work for you and can work against the parties, both scenarios of which benefit you as the qualified medical evaluator. And I'll share that insight with you in today's session. Okay? So let's expand now on some of the new intake procedure changes that I'm going to suggest you implement for your very next evaluation. Okay, so when it comes time for you to make an appointment for a new QME evaluation, in other words, you get a phone call and some party wants to schedule an appointment with you, time shall be of the essence. And when it comes to your intake procedures, now more than ever, it's time for you as a qualified medical evaluator to play hardball, because guess what? The parties are way ahead of you in this game, and they're already playing hardball. If you do not play hardball on your intake procedures and make necessary changes, guess what will happen? You'll be wasting time making appointments that are not valid appointments. Now, let me share with you this idea. When a call for a new appointment comes in, there are varying strengths of the quality of that appointment. Okay? Appointment requests can range along a spectrum from low quality requests to high quality compensable evaluations for which you know, number one, the examinee is going to show up. Number two, the parties are going to have no objection to you as the last man standing. And number three, that you're going to get paid for the evaluation. That's on one end of the spectrum. So you can imagine what's on the other end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum are those requests for appointments that are low quality, for which there will be some objection that you're the last man standing, for which one or the other parties is going to have an objection to the specialty of the panel, for which one or the other of the parties are going to say they never received a copy of the panel, for which the parties are going to decide they're going to use an AME, and for whatever reason, the appointment is not going to go through. So these appointment requests, which are not the same as appointments, when you get a phone call, it's a request for an appointment. That's not the same as a bona fide, verified, compensable appointment, okay? These requests fall on a spectrum from low quality to high quality. And I want to help you ensure that when you dedicate staff time, effort, energy, and resources, which is coming out of your flat rate fixed fee, when you dedicate those resources, that you have a high quality compensable appointment so that you're not losing profitability. It's now time for hardball. So when you schedule an appointment, when you take in a new appointment, there are costs associated with that scheduling. These are your admin costs. So the more closely to one single cycle of action you can complete this scheduling process in, the more profitable will be your evaluation. Now, if you have to schedule an appointment and then reschedule an appointment, okay, the reschedule has costs associated with it, correct? Your staff has to now take the time to re-notice all the parties and change dates on paperwork and send out notices either by fax or by mail. And there are costs associated with that. So who bears the burden of those costs? You as the business owner, as the qualified medical evaluator, bear those costs. So we don't want reschedules. We want solid, single time through, single cycle of action schedules. Now, if you take in low quality requests and create appointments for low quality requests, guess what? You're going to be going through several cycles of action. Now, if the appointment keeps, if you take in a low quality appointment and the appointment actually keeps, surprisingly it keeps, okay, then your scheduling costs and any rescheduling costs will be borne by the evaluation. Those costs will come out of the reimbursement for the evaluation. So the more cycles of action involved is more costly to you. Now, in the worst case scenario, if that appointment does not keep, which will happen if you don't play hardball up front, if that appointment does not keep, guess where the costs of scheduling and rescheduling and guess where these admin costs come from? They come from your pocket. There is no case from which to withdraw these administrative costs. If the appointment doesn't keep, you bear the staff administrative costs of this. And guess what? The parties would be more than happy to have you bear the costs. They have no concern about your costs. But you need to protect your costs, and I want to share with you how to play hardball so that when you take in an appointment, it's a high quality, compensable, reimbursable quality appointment. So to that end, it's essential that every case come with at least the following basic information. when you take in an appointment request, you ask the party to send you a copy of the panel request. You ask them to send you a copy of the panel. You ask them to send you a copy of any demographics, of the demographics that they have. And you ask them to send copies of the strike letters, which leave you as the last man standing. Now, the more of these documents you're able to obtain, the higher quality is the potential for the appointment. The more likely is the appointment to be a compensable, reimbursable appointment for you. The fewer of these that you're able to obtain starts to raise red flags about the quality of the appointment. Okay? Now, on these documents, the more complete is the information on the documents, again, is the higher quality, the higher potential for this appointment request to be a compensable, profitable evaluation for you. If any of these documents are missing, or if any information on the document are missing, the lower quality potential the appointment request has. So let me give you an example with regards to strike letters. A high quality appointment, an appointment that has a high likelihood of keeping, of sticking, and becoming a reimbursable appointment with you, is a request that comes with 2 strike letters, a copy of the applicant attorney strike letter and a copy of the defense attorney strike letter, which between the two of them are unambiguous as to the fact that you are the last man standing. Now, as we step down the quality scale, what would be an example of a lower quality strike process? How about a copy of the panel? They send you a copy of the panel, and on the panel there are evidences of striking with your name on the panel left blank. In other words, the other 2 doctors have some symbol across their name with a reference that the AA strike, and then another party has a reference that the DA struck, and your name is the last man standing. Does that suffice in your mind as sufficient evidence that you are the last man standing for you to devote time, effort, energy, and staff resources to scheduling an appointment that these strikes could have been written in by the legal secretary at one or the other offices? In other words, this is not as strong as having actual strike letters from both of the parties. What's even lower quality than that? How about an example where you get a call from one of the parties requesting a QME appointment with you as a qualified medical evaluator, and they tell you that they exercise their right to strike. Let's say this request comes from the applicant attorney. They exercise their right to strike, but the other party failed to strike, or they blew the timeline to strike. And therefore, because the timeline is blown, the applicant attorney is selecting you out of the remaining 2 doctors. They're selecting you to be the qualified medical evaluator. Now, I'm telling you that that's a low quality request for a QME appointment. There's a high likelihood. The reason it's low quality is because there's a high likelihood that the other party is going to have some objection to either the specialty of the panel, to you as the last man standing. They're going to have some objection. So the strike letters give you great insight as to the strength of the appointment request that you're getting. And my policy is that we do not dedicate staff time, effort, energy, and resources, and we don't assume unnecessary costs unless the appointment request is strong. And this is the process through which you can take each request to determine the strength of the appointment. Okay? So this will save you tremendous time and will save you tremendous money by ensuring that each of the appointment requests for which you give an actual day, date, and time appointment, each of those are strong appointments that are going to keep and for which you will be reimbursed. Okay? So that will help you there. Let's talk now about some insights and ideas regarding the medical records. Okay, so that'll help you with your intake procedures and help you to schedule only those appointments that are quality and compensable appointments. Now, with regards to the review of records and the medical records that you receive, this is a big topic and I want to spend some time on this. Again, like all procedures under the new flat rate reimbursement that we receive under all of the medical legal billing codes, except for deposition testimony and sub rosa videotaping, all of the fees are flat rate fees. Now, the review of records, again, time shall be of the essence. And in the time between the April 1st, 2021 implementation date of the new medical legal fee schedule and now, it seems that the medical records and the documents that are sent to you as the qualified medical evaluator, because they involve potential fees for the qualified medical evaluator and or potential savings of fees for the claims payers, the medical records are taking on a new level of importance, and I want to share with you some insight as to how this is being perceived by the parties, especially the payers in the system. So, number one, it should come as no surprise to us that the numbers of pages of medical records are going to become increasingly limited by the parties. The parties are going to begin to diminish the number of pages of medical records that are sent to us as qualified medical evaluators. Now, under the old medical legal fee schedule, the pages of medical records were something that the claims administrator could dump on us as the qualified medical evaluator. The claims administrator could take a stack of medical records this tall and plop that on our desk as the qualified medical evaluator, because there was no direct reimbursement tied to the number of pages of medical records sent to us as the qualified medical evaluator. Now, under the new medical legal fee schedule, each of the medical legal billing codes has some modifier for the number of pages of medical records. So under each of those billing codes, the incentive of the claims payer is to diminish the number of pages of medical records to more closely approximate the flat rate fee provided for under each of those billing codes. So under the initial comprehensive evaluation, the ML201, the flat rate fee for that is $2,015. The closer to $2,015 that each case can be orchestrated by modulating the number of pages of medical records sent to you as the qualified medical evaluator, the greater is the win under this new game for the claims payer. So the goal of the payer is to minimize fees and to bring the fee for each evaluation closest to the fee that's established by the code, which for the ML201 is 2015, the ML202 is I think 1316, and the ML203, the reevaluation, or the supplemental report, I'm sorry, is $650. The closer in to that fee that your report comes, the greater is the win for the claims payer. And this is opposite the incentive of you as the qualified medical evaluator, who would love to have 1,000 excess pages of medical records for which you could bill at $3 per page. So it should come as no surprise to you that the parties are excerpting now, for the first time in all of recorded history, the parties are taking it upon themselves to excerpt the pages of medical records. And I have here a copy of an email to demonstrate this to you. This is an email that came from a large defense firm. You all know this defense firm. This is a major player throughout the entirety of the state of California. And this is from a legal secretary within that firm. Now, her job within the firm is to reduce the number of pages of medical records, okay, that are sent to us as the qualified medical evaluator. So these defense law firms now have dedicated staff that get paid money to reduce the amount of medical records sent to you as the qualified medical evaluator. So rather than the qualified medical evaluator getting paid $3 per page to review a large number of medical records, there are staff within the offices of defense law firms extracting that money, getting that money on their side to review the medical records and excerpt the medical records down to the minimum possible. And here's an example from an email that I just received from one of these defense law firms. She said, "Please see the attached excerpts from subpoenaed records we recently received. On May 28, 21, we sent the cover letter, the declaration, and medical records for your evaluation of the applicant. The total of records being sent for your review is 127 pages. Please review these additional documents and include your review of them into your comprehensive report." So prior to the defense attorney obtaining the subpoena records, right? Under the old medical legal fee schedule, subpoena records were sent to us as qualified medical evaluator in a stack this tall. And in this case, the subpoena records were from Kaiser. And you know how Kaiser records can be, right? It can take 10 pages for one data service. So she took the subpoena medical records and excerpted them down such that the total number of pages, including the prior records that she had sent, was no more than 127 pages. So let's say the new excerpts were, say, 47 pages, and the prior records that were sent were 80 pages. How thrilled am I going to be to receive these additional 47 pages that I'm now required to review, but which still comes in under the 200 pages of medical records provided for by the ML201. Okay, so I'm telling you, this is what's happening. The parties will get their greatest win when they can send to you exactly 200 pages of medical records, which are included in the billing under the ML201 code. So the parties are excerpting the medical records. Now, also there's a movement within the parties to impose a new phrase that's not included in the language of either the new medical legal fee schedule or its companion code, CCR 9793. But the parties, in interpreting the new medical legal fee schedule, are starting to adopt this phrase of personally reviewed, personally reviewed. And the incentive that's operative here for the claims payers and the defense attorneys is that if they send you as the qualified medical evaluator 1,000 pages of medical records, okay, so that's 800 excess pages for which you as the qualified medical evaluator can bill $3 a page at $2,400. If they send you 1,000 pages of medical records and you have those medical records condensed and excerpted by a third party, some company that does this for you, or perhaps your secretary does this for you, and she's able to condense 1,000 pages of medical records down into, let's say, 100 pages, a 100-page transcript of the medical records, that you, as a qualified medical evaluator, personally reviewed only 100 pages, which is included, up to 200 pages is included in the basic billing code, the ML201. So if you personally reviewed only 100 pages of the 1,000 pages that were excerpted, you cannot bill for excess pages because you only personally reviewed 100 pages. Now, even though it may cost you $400 to have your secretary or a third-party company to excerpt these records for you. Let's say it costs you $400 and you're getting $2,015 for the evaluation. Now your reimbursement is down to $1,615 because the parties are going to prevent you from billing for the excess pages because you didn't personally review them. Now, this is not something that's taken hold, and this is not something that's written into the language of the law, but I'm telling you that this is an interpretation of the language of the law, and it's something that has the potential to gain some momentum from the claims payers. And this, of course, would be a great problem for us as the qualified medical evaluator, because those excerpting costs, the cost of excerpting those medical records, would come out of the reimbursement for the evaluation. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here as we go, and I'll share with you a declaration page that was sent to me by one of the parties. And then the third thing that I want to talk to you about medical records has to do with establishing the history of the case without the medical records. So what do we mean by that? Well, I recently had a case where I received a small amount of medical records, let's say 150 pages. So there are no excess pages, and this evaluation is going to be billed under the ML201 for $2,015. There's no excess page billing, but it was a very, very complex case, Under the old medical legal fee schedule, I can see that this case would probably be about a $6,000 report based upon the built-in complexity of the case. There's multiple dates of injury, multiple cumulative trauma injuries. There's prior awards of permanent disability. One claim is being reopened for new and further disability. There's multiple body parts. There was a prior qualified medical evaluator on the case who authored no fewer than 4 reports himself on the case, but has now retired. And so the case has come to me now, and it's a very, very complex case. And the new medical legal fee schedule does not have built in it an exception for complex cases like this. There should be an exception. There should be a modifier for complex cases like this. We had such a modifier under the old medical legal fee schedule, but under the new medical legal fee schedule, we don't. And I'm now obligated to get this evaluation done, come hell or high water, for $2,015, and I'm not really sure how I can do it. Well, what's interesting is that because the medical records are so scant, at only 150 pages, the parties are thereby requiring that I establish the history in the face-to-face evaluation, because the history is not provided in the medical records. So let me just give you a specific example. In this case that I'm sharing with you, it's a very complex case. The examinee had a prior award of permanent disability. So for the new claim, same body part, certainly apportionment is going to be an issue. And I'll read to you from the cover letter that was sent to me by a large defense firm throughout the state of California. You all know this defense firm. It's a major player in the state of California. The attorney says here under the questions in the cover letter on apportionment, she says, as noted above in the cover letter, applicant has a prior 10/26/2012 injury to the right wrist and right hand that's settled by stipulated award on April 20, 2016 for 16% permanent disability. Okay, so there's a prior award of permanent disability. She says, please use Labor Code Section 4664 and subtract from any current disability to the right upper extremity the prior award. Please explain why you did or did not apply Labor Code Section 4664. Now, without going into a long discussion of apportionment, you and I both know that this would be a complex apportionment argument for which there's not one single medical record regarding the prior injury or regarding the prior permanent disability award to the right upper extremity. So you and I both know that in order to properly apportion, I would have to establish this history in the face-to-face evaluation with the examinee on my time and on my dime. So rather than the parties sending me the necessary paperwork upon which I could build my argument, upon which I could build my interrogation during the face-to-face interview, in a cost-cutting and cost-saving measure, they reduced the number of pages of medical records and put the burden on me during the face-to-face evaluation to establish the history to resolve this difficult apportionment determination. And I'm telling you, this is where it's going. It's just like the new game of basketball, where one side wants to score 3-pointers and the other side wants to have blockage of 3-pointers and force this party into shooting 1-pointers whenever possible. This is what's happening. So my position on this is that without the medical records, there's no way I can create an apportionment argument that qualifies as substantial medical evidence. So the parties are going to be required, it's going to be incumbent on the parties to provide for me these medical records, even as much as they don't want to. Okay? And I'm just sharing with you some of how this is playing out in real life as we mature through the new medical legal fee schedule. Okay? Now, again, in another new insight, I want to share with you some ideas regarding the proper use of the cover letters that you receive. Okay, now in our last session, we spent some time talking about the cover letters that you receive and the new importance of answering specifically the questions in the cover letters that you receive. Now, with regards to the cover letters and the time it takes for you to resolve the questions posed by the parties in their cover letters, that time has to come from somewhere. So what I'm suggesting is that the face-to-face evaluation time that you used to spend be condensed, and some of that time that you formerly dedicated to the face-to-face evaluation, that you dedicate some of that time to doing a good job on answering the specific questions requested of you by the parties in the cover letters that you receive. Now, this is required by law, and many qualified medical evaluators do not know this. So, in CCR 35.5, our obligation as the qualified medical evaluator is described. It tells us that the reporting evaluator shall attempt to address each question raised by each party in the issue cover letter sent to the evaluator. Now, many times qualified medical evaluators look at this obligation as a tremendous, tremendous burden. But what I want to share with you in today's discussion is that answering the specific questions in the cover letter can serve you as well. It can serve not only the parties by getting them the specific responses to the specific questions that they have, but it can also serve you as the qualified medical evaluator, because the questions that are posed to you in the cover letters establish the scope of your evaluation. And so if there are issues in the evaluation that are not addressed in the cover letters that are sent to you, then those are issues that you can defer until such time as you receive an appropriate cover letter that specifically requests you to address those issues. And I want to share with you an example from an actual case that I had recently that had to do with denied body parts, and the cover letters related to that particular evaluation. So I have the cover letters here in front of me, and I'm going to read from them for you. first one comes from the applicant attorney, and he says that the following body parts are at issue: right shoulder, right arm, and neck. Right shoulder, right arm, and neck. Now, in the medical records that I received, all of the medical records relate to the right shoulder only. There's no mention in any of the medical records of right arm or of neck. In fact, this examinee had a surgery to the right shoulder. When I evaluated him face to face, he was all about the shoulder. There was no mention of arm, there was no mention of neck. Well, the defense attorney cover letter states that the applicant obtained representation with such and such attorney and filed an application for adjudication alleging injury to the right shoulder, arm, and neck, period. This claim is accepted for the right shoulder, period. Now, nowhere in either covered letter does either covered letter request that I address the denied and disputed body parts of the right arm or the neck. Nowhere in these cover letters. So, for example, from the defense attorney cover letter, it says, what are the current diagnoses and which, if any, are specifically associated with the applicant's alleged injury? And there's no mention of addressing the right arm or the right shoulder. In the applicant attorney cover letter, it talks about an MRI of the right shoulder, and there's no specific request within these cover letters that I in any way assess the right arm or the right shoulder. So I focused my evaluation on the right shoulder only, and don't you know, I issued my report, and very shortly thereafter the applicant attorney sent me a letter and said, thank you for your report. Please note that the examinee claims injury to the right shoulder, right arm, and the neck. In review of your report, it appears your only focus was the right shoulder. Please provide a complete discussion regarding the other body parts, specifically the arm and the neck. So now, in a request for supplemental report, the applicant attorney specifically requests that I address these denied body parts, whereas that request was not contained in the initial cover letters that I received, and so I limited my evaluation only to the right shoulder. Well, I responded to this request for a supplemental report by stating that there was no request to address those denied body parts. There was no mention of those body parts in the medical records that I received, okay, in the limited number of medical records that I received, and therefore, in order to address the disputed body parts, a new face-to-face evaluation would be required. And this is how, if you focus on the questions that are posed to you in the cover letters that you receive, those questions will allow you and will help you in focusing the scope of your evaluation to specifically respond to those specific questions, but nothing more. And this will be a tremendous time saver for you, in that you won't be wasting any unnecessary time focusing on issues that are not contained within the cover letters that you received. Now, over time, the parties are going to more specifically customize their cover letters to the issues that are relevant to your particular evaluation. And in my opinion, that's a good thing, and it'll be a good thing for all parties. Until that happens, for us as qualified medical evaluators, we need to focus on the cover letters that we do receive and focus on resolving the issues in those specific questions in those cover letters. This will save you tremendous time and increase the profitability of your evaluation by providing you an opportunity for either a supplemental report or a new face-to-face evaluation in those cases where it's the party's fault for producing low quality, poor quality cover letters and not specifically directing you to the necessary issues to be resolved in your evaluation. So doctors, isn't that interesting? Isn't that amazing? And isn't that fascinating? You know, we're now in a new game. And I can tell you, I was at the fee schedule committee meetings, and in the fee schedule committee meetings were many, many claims payers from small and large claims payers throughout the state of California. And I can tell you that the claims payers were dogged and were determined to accomplish two objectives in the establishment of a new medical legal fee schedule. Number one, they wanted to ensure that we as qualified medical evaluators produce better and more high quality reports. And a high quality report, as defined by the claims payers, is a report that allows them, the claims payers, to resolve the disputed issues. So a high quality report serves the claims payers by allowing them to resolve the cases. That was objective number one. And objective number two was to pay less for higher quality reports. So they wanted to win on two fronts. They wanted to up the quality of reports while simultaneously decreasing the amount of money for which they had to pay for those reports. And I can tell you, the claims payers were vocal and they were dogged and determined. And the claims payers succeeded, at least so far, on one front, and that is in reducing the costs paid to qualified medical evaluators. And I can tell you, they're going to be dogged and determined in using the new medical legal fee schedule to their benefit from here on out until we get our next new medical legal fee schedule. So where does that leave us as qualified medical evaluators? Well, it leaves us in a position where, in order to operate profitably, time is of the essence. Now, the parties will attempt to expand the qualified medical evaluator's time regardless of the flat rate fee for which they expect to pay us as qualified medical evaluators. So they want to get as much time and as much value out of us for as close as possible to the fee that's established by each of the medical legal billing codes. For you as a qualified medical evaluator to operate profitably, you can first of all have no waste. So in the interest of eliminating waste, it's essential that you modify your intake procedures, and I gave you several suggestions as to how to do that. Number two, with regards to the medical records, you as the qualified medical evaluator can only resolve issues for which you have medical records that establish the history. Your history-taking face-to-face evaluation is not time, does not allow for sufficient time for you to establish history for which you have no medical records regarding that history. And just as I shared with you the case that involved an apportionment question, there are no medical records that in any way describe that history. And so, aside from myself spending hours and hours in the face-to-face evaluation, asking the examinee dozens and dozens of questions for which the responses may or may not be accurate, there's no way to resolve the disputed issue in the absence of the medical records. So we as qualified medical evaluators can really only operate within the medical records that the parties send us. Okay? So limit your evaluation and limit the discussions that you entertained to only those discussions that can be resolved with the medical records that the parties found it in their infinite wisdom to send to you as the evaluator. Number three is that the cover letters provide for us the scope of the evaluation. And the cover letters will contain questions to us that are both vague and that are specific. And we address the questions that are in the cover letters, but nothing more. Nothing more. When the questions in the cover letters do not adequately answer or resolve the concerns of the parties, the parties will then be obligated to provide us a new cover letter and a new opportunity to resolve that issue in the form of a supplemental report, or in the case that I shared with you today, in the context of a new face-to-face evaluation. So doctors, I hope these ideas help you, and I hope that you will continue to provide services as a qualified medical evaluator. Our system desperately needs qualified medical evaluators, and a good qualified medical evaluator in this new era is a qualified medical evaluator who can quickly and accurately resolve disputed issues, with emphasis on the adverb quickly. To survive as a qualified medical evaluator in the new era, time shall be of the essence, so it's essential now more than ever that you quickly resolve disputed issues. So I hope these ideas help you, and until our next session when we discover and uncover more of what we've learned about the new medical legal fee schedule, this is Dr. Perry Carpenter. I'm wishing you the best of success in your career as a qualified medical evaluator.